First, let's address the elephant in the room. I'm back on camera after about a year of not being able to film videos. This isn't the most exciting environment, but I am in the process of moving, so hopefully soon I'll have a proper studio to record videos in. But welcome to Saxon's Hydrosphere. I'm Saxon and I love music and movies, and with this channel I wanted to create a space where both music and movie lovers can coexist, and today I'm going to be talking about the brand new Martin Scorsese film, Killers of the Flower Moon. Firstly, what can I say about Martin Scorsese? He's one of the finest directors out there, having been working in the industry for over 50 years now with 26 feature films under his belt, and that's not including his just as extensive work on documentaries. And as I've been making my way through more of his films this year, as well as listening to countless interviews, he's become one of my favourite directors and a man that I deeply respect. And I do plan to do a Scorsese ranking down the line in the future, but there are still many of his films that I am yet to see. But let's get on to Killers of the Flower Moon now, his 26th feature film, exactly 50 years after his breakout movie Mean Streets. First of all, to address the thing that seems to be at the forefront of the conversation surrounding this film, and that's the runtime. This is a 3.5-hour movie, and to some might be a little bit of a heavy ask in a cinema scenario where you can't pause the film for bathroom breaks and you might not be at your most comfortable. But if you are someone that can stomach 3.5 hours in the cinema, I highly recommend you going to see this one in the theatres while you can before it goes to streaming. I did have my own concerns about the length going in, especially with my bladder, with the amount of coffee that I drink, but I knew I had to go and see this one anyway because this was my first experience with a Scorsese film in the cinema. I'd never experienced one in a theatre before, and as grim as this might be to think about, this could well maybe Scorsese's last film, and I really wanted to experience it in the way that Marty would want it to be experienced. And I'm so glad I did, because these 3.5 hours flew by. I said in my Christopher Nolan ranking how Oppenheimer makes great use of the 3-hour runtime. Well, this does it even better, and that's with an extra 30 minutes left on the end. And the only thing that tampered with my cinema going experience were other people. Now, on a quick tangent, I don't know why here in 2023 we are still having to put up with people's phones in a cinema. I heard the same text tone go off twice at 2 different points in the film, and I saw 3 phone screen lights up at different points. And I swore to myself that if I saw a 4th, I was going to shout to put the phone away. But that didn't happen. But seriously, if you can't go a mere few hours without checking your phone, then don't go to a cinema. Arsehole. Apart from that though, everything else was amazing, and I loved being able to see this in the cinema, and like I said, it did not feel like 3.5 hours at all. In terms of the story though, I went in pretty blind to this one. I knew it was set in the early 1900s and involved the cohabitation of 20th century Americans and Native Americans, and obviously a string of killings involved, as the title suggests. But aside from that, it was pretty much the star power of the cast and crew that got me excited to see this one. So the film is based on a non-fiction book about how the Osage people discovered oil on their land, making them instantly quite wealthy, which attracted the rich white Americans to bring infrastructure to the land and integrate themselves into the society, and where powerful people orchestrated a bunch of murders to kind of ensure the flow of money went to themselves in their own pockets. Now, apparently from what I've read, the film takes a bit of a different approach than the book does. The book seems to focus more on like a murder mystery type narrative, focusing more on the FBI investigation. But with this film, it's much more told from the perspective of the Osage people, in particular Lily Gladstone's character Molly Burkhart, and the sinister men behind the plots of these murders, including her husband Ernest, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and his uncle, played by Robert De Niro. And it's told in a very linear way from the point in which Ernest and Molly meet each other, fall in love, all the way up to the point when the arrests start taking place. And having the story revolve around these two people and this relationship really pulls attention to how dark this tale is, especially when you take into account that this actually happened. And I think it's a story worth telling because I myself had no idea that these kind of greed-motivated genocidal crimes were still happening against Native Americans well into the 1900s. And it just goes to show that it doesn't matter how well you think you may know someone, everybody has the potential to betray you for very selfish means if they were to seize the opportunity to do so. And the way that the film chooses to explore this really makes you feel sick towards your own species. The performances, of course, were amazing, as you would expect from actors like Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, who honestly played quite different characters than what you'd normally expect from them. De Niro's Bill King Hale was a far more subtle performance than his other Scorsese roles, but a far more evil, sinister, and calculated type of person with the way that he plays the nice guy, befriending these people that he plots to kill, and easily manipulating the people around him, particularly his nephew, to do these abhorrent things. He's got a real Gus Fring vibe to him in that sense, and the way he switches switches from playing the saint one moment to then being a manipulative, conniving scumbag the next is terrifying to watch, especially when considering that you still see these types of people everywhere today. And then we have DiCaprio's Ernest Burkhart, who is again a very different kind of character that you'd see Leo play in Scorsese films. On the surface at the beginning, he's got a bit of a lovable idiot type of nature to him, and a lot like De Niro's character, it's far more on the subtle side, but just as nuanced. Ernest is a quite simple-minded man, and it's actually kind of sad to see him get so easily manipulated by his uncle, because aside from his greedy nature, which is expressed very early on in the film, you can tell that he genuinely does love his wife, but there's this massive cognitive disconnect between the love he has for his wife and the horrible acts of murder that he involves himself in against the rest of her family. I do believe that had he not been so easily manipulated by his uncle, that he'd be able to kind of suppress this greedy and selfish side of him and live a pretty happy and honest life with Molly. But sadly, he's too easily manipulated by the promise of wealth. And then we have Lily Gladstone, who is somehow by some miracle acting on par with or even better than her A-lister co-stars with her portrayal of Molly Burkhart. This is another subtle performance where everything is in the tiny details and the way that her character kind of transforms throughout the movie. You first get introduced to her and her charm is really infectious and you kind of get connected with her really instantly. And then as these murders unfold, you can see that she's still got her head screwed on and she's trying to really figure everybody out and trying to get ahead of the game here, but then the rug is completely pulled from underneath her when her own illness starts to really get the better of her. More and more of her family is getting killed off, and these little moments where you see her break is just so impactful. And if she doesn't get at least a nomination for an Academy Award next year, I'll be astounded. Visually, of course, it's stunning as well, not only due to the cinematography, but like I said before, the editing is flawless in the way that it stitches all these scenes together. Like I said at the beginning, it did not feel like 3.5 hours at all, and most of that is down to the editing. I also have to give massive props to the score. It was quite subtle, much like the main characters, but it kept the pace moving at a momentum that felt fast and slick, as well as eerie and foreboding at the same time. There's this one little motif from what I think was a double bass that keeps creeping in and out at different points as the plot's progressing. And to me, this is one of the most engaging scores in any Scorsese film that I've seen. The only thing that I had a little bit of a problem with is that in the first 30 or 40 minutes, everything is moving so quickly that I struggled to kind of remember who certain characters were and their relation to other characters, which did clear itself up as time went by, but it was definitely slightly overwhelming to begin with. And then my only other one nitpick is that Brendan Fraser shows up at one point in the film, and his performance seems like he was kind of trying a little too hard, and it kind of took me out of it a little bit. He's only got literally 2 small scenes, and the second one is definitely better than the first, but I don't know, his performance was a little weird to me. Apart from that though, I can't find any flaws in this film anywhere really. I've not been able to stop thinking about it since I left the theatre, and it might just turn out to be my favourite of this year. Sorry, Oppenheimer. I'll also just say that the direction the film decides to take in the end was something that completely took me by surprise, and I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before. And I mean that as a good thing, by the way. It kind of wrapped the story up very poignantly and was presented in a very unique and interesting way. And I don't know how Marty did it, but I finished a 3.5 hour film still feeling like I wanted more, but not in the sense that I felt let down or disappointed or that something was missing, but I was just that invested in the story and the characters and the history. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of this video that I would eventually like to do a Scorsese ranking, and so far I've only seen 11 of his films. I would say that out of those 11, this film sits fairly comfortably at number 6. Which, if anything, just goes to show how much I love the top 5, because like I said, I can't really point much flaw in this film. My patrons will know my current full ranking with the other 10 films, but that obviously might be subject to change until I've seen everything. But if you haven't seen Killers of the Flower Moon yet and you're a little bit on the fence about it, I highly encourage you to see this one. If you like Scorsese films with despicable characters and an interest in the darker side of human history, then you won't be disappointed at all. Thanks for watching. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment down below about how you felt about Killers of the Flower Moon. Where would you put it in your own Scorsese ranking if you have one? Feel free to check out my Patreon. I'll leave a link to that down below. There's only a few people on there so far, and I would love to have more people involved. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next one.